Hi, I'm Mina Malik Hussain, and you're watching The Coffee Table. And we have one of my favorite things to talk about today on the show, which is writing. And I'm so excited to be having some fine, budding young writers on set with me today, and one more accomplished, but also budding writer joining us via Skype. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation about how it is to be an aspiring writer, how it is to be somebody who has a book out, the sort of challenges one faces. You know, you're juggling your career, your passion on the side, you know, all the things in between. So joining me on set today is Miss Maheen Ahmed, who is a poet, a writer, and a photographer. Her book of poetry, Ramis, came out in 2018. She's an online content creator and a member of the Young Women's Writers Federation. And joining me on set also is Maryam Rana-Poet, whose book of poetry, Castle of Emotions, came out in 2020. It's a book of lovely motivational poetry. She's a clinical dietitian by day and a writer and painter by night, and also has a little setup on Facebook called Bright Hub, where you can see all her wonderful work. And joining me over the internet is Dr. Sajid Malik, who is a writer, a researcher, an educationist, and the author of 2 novels. His first one, 14 Days, and his second one, Fight for the Paradise. Welcome to the show, writers.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us on board.
So I'm looking at these wonderful books of yours, and this one is Maheen's,
Yeah.
and this one is Maryam's. Oh, it's so satisfying to have something in your hand, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Maryam, tell me about your work. So let's start at the beginning, I like to say. And I'm always really interested with people who have this kind of like serious day job, such as yours. And you are a dietitian, you know, you work at Gangaram, you have your own practice. And then here you are, writing poems, burning the midnight oil. So sort of, how did sort of this journey begin?
Well, that journey actually began when I was a student.
Yeah.
I was a library student. Like I used to go to the library a lot.
Yeah.
So
As you know, serious students.
yeah, sort of. So when I started writing just as a went out therapy. Whenever I was going through peak of emotions, whenever I was extremely happy about something, whenever I was sad about something, I used to just, you know, grab a paper out of my bag and start writing. This was how it actually started. I would like to also mention that it started with lots of inspiration of my elder sister. She also used to write, and she became my major inspiration, motivation. So I used to write just for fun, and all my friends and family, they were always being very motivational in this entire journey. Then in 2020, I started working as a full-time clinical dietitian.
That's a tough year to start any kind of work, huh?
Yeah. So, and then the corona came. Of course, I had to meet patients, and I'm alhamdulillah, I am a coronavirus survivor. So, when I was in my days of quarantine, that was the time I realized that this is the time I need to, you know, there were times when I was so numb. I was on bed. I was so weak. I was not even able to grab my hand till the glass of water.
Oh gosh.
And nobody in my family was corona positive, so no one could come
There you
in.
were, shut up in your room, sort of limply lying there. In a way, it's very poetic, you know, when you think of, you know, poets back in the day, sort of wan and limply lying, but the brains are working full speed.
So what I used to do was I used to open up my diary and read the poems, and I was like, oh my God, they are so big motivation. I just need to publish them. So I started contacting the publishers, and eventually this book is the end story to my
That's wonderful.
poems.
That's so wonderful. And I feel like a lot of times, you know, one is writing and beavering away, and a lot of times people are like, oh, well, you're a writer or you're a poet. Do you have a book? And a lot of times, like, you don't have a book, but you do it seriously, and you consider it in a serious way. So, Maheen, do you feel like, because you, you know, you wear so many different hats, and one of them is that you've written for magazines online, and there's sort of really interesting online digital content creation happening. So do you feel like that's really helped writers sort of come out of the cracks and share their work?
I think yes, because I think generally we think about writing, think about maybe poets from a long time ago, they were writers. But it's more diverse than that. We have film writers, magazine writers, journalistic writers too.
Yeah.
There's also a big amount of food writers now as well, and also comedy writers. So it's very diverse. And I think we as a society should open up our eyes that there's more than just one thing going on. You don't have to be a poet to be a writer. You can write jokes and still be a writer. You can just write small photograph captions when you're a writer still. So you have to, it's not a small thing, it's a big web of things.
Yeah.
And if you can be anything you want to be, and we shouldn't limit ourselves, and we shouldn't be scared of our own talent as well.
Yeah.
It's good to expand and learn different things and practice a lot too. That helps in writing also. Trying
What do you mean by,
things.
and I think that's really interesting that you brought up practice, because if one thinks of oneself in a sort of more diverse way and that you can sort of try your hand at lots of different things, and automatically you are practicing as well. So do you think it's valuable? Has it been valuable for you to do that kind of different practice?
Yes. I think sometimes when you're good at something, you sort of get stuck in one field or in just one sort of idea or concept. But if you want to really work on your artistic expression, you should try different things.
Yeah.
Like if you're used to writing love stories, try writing comedy stories.
Yeah.
We should experiment more, I think. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
And not limit ourselves in our own brains. Because then people are like, you should write more of this stuff. And you're like, I had no more ideas, so you should try different things also. It keeps the brain active.
Keeps the brain fresh. I want to come back to ideas. But hi, Dr. Malik, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. So, Dr. Malik, you are, again, you are also somebody who wears many different hats. And you're an educationist, you're a researcher, you're an analyst, and a lot of your sort of, your day job is in conflict studies, which is fascinating in its own right. But then here you are with these 2 novels under your belt. So tell me a little bit about your journey writing those novels.
Thank you so much for having me on your show and giving me the chance to talk to you and your audience. Actually, this 14 Days is the novel, and the second book, Fighting for the Paradise, is a research book. And it is about the conflict which we saw in Swat region of Pakistan in 2007 and 2009. But these are the 2 parallel streams actually which I have been following as a researcher and as a fiction writer. This 14 Days basically is about COVID-19. The subtitle of the novel is a novel about COVID-19, lockdown, and epidemic terror.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was, yes.
So to be clear, 14 Days is
written
fiction.
during COVID-19.
Huh. So just to be clear, 14 Days is fiction, isn't it?
This is fiction.
Yeah.
Novel is pure fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was written during these 14 days, during the lockdown. You remember last year when COVID-19 started, there was huge fear actually. We were not aware of the nature of this virus and how difficult it would be to live with it. So when the epidemic started, there was a lot of fear.
Yes.
But that fear increased a lot during the lockdown period. And when the first lockdown was announced in March last year, people actually were not aware how long it would be. But the initial period was 14 days, if you can recall.
Yes.
So this basically deals with those initial 14 days. And you will be amazed to know that it was actually written in those 14 days.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Something that I was thinking about throughout my life. And I was planning to write something. So here it was COVID. We all were confined to our places. And there was nothing to do better than to write. So I sat down, I thought about it, and one fine morning I started writing. And after 14 days, it was written.
That's wonderful. The idea that the book was written in 14 days, and that's also quite tremendous. So how were you able to do that? Because I feel like a lot of writers do face this problem that there's so many things that have to be done in the day, especially when you have an alpha job. So how were you able to kind of whack out a whole novel in just 2 weeks?
Well, this COVID in a way was a blessing in disguise for me at least. Because I was able to do something which is, I said, I had been thinking throughout my life. I wanted to be a writer, and I had a lot of stuff in my mind. It was difficult to transfer it on to the paper. And here was COVID, and I was confined to my place like everybody else, and I thought, why not write? And when I started writing, it was just writing. It was unstoppable. It was such an experience that I cannot probably express it in words. I mean, as if I was possessed. I was writing, and at the end of every day, I would count the words, and 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words I was writing in a day.
Wow.
It's a strange kind of experience, kind of ecstasy, which only a writer and at the time of creation can feel.
No, I think that's, well, inspiration is that magical thing, isn't it? Mr. Maryam, did you also feel kind of caught by that same kind of, flight of the imagination where it just kind of grabbed you?
Exactly. That's what actually happens to me at night. Whenever I'm about to sleep, something comes in my mind and I'm like, oh my God, where's my phone? Open the memo. Okay, write something out. Inspiration really matters a lot. For example, inspiration are not just something that comes from bigger things of your life. Even of the light coming out of a car's the car light, it's also a kind of, you can get out of the darkness whenever you need to get out of dark. So even little light can help you so much. So for me, as you know, that I am a motivational writer. So what I do is I get inspired by anything. I can get inspired by a little kitten as well. I love having animals, and most of my very good friends are animals. I met a dog recently. I named him Ginny, and that dog was very helpful to me in many terms. And I start getting inspired by little things of my life. Sometimes I learn from my patients. I mean, they come to get counseling from me, but I start learning from them.
That's true.
So most of the poems that you'll see in my book as well, all are associated with major incidents of my life. So that's, I believe, how inspiration is very important.
Yeah. So how do you Maheen, what's your process? How does inspiration find you?
I always start a feeling I have no ideas. What do I do?
This is a common thing, it's like that fear of the blank page that a lot of people have. It's just like,
Exactly. It always starts out like that, and then afterwards, I sit down, I think, and I have an idea, ekdam se. You start writing it down, and then eventually, I let it cook for a while also. If you have an idea in the morning, it sort of comes into a body by night time, then you write it down properly. Then after you go into the writing the first draft, second draft, plan out the project, for photography project, then I let it cook properly in my brain first, then I write down. Because sometimes ideas they're there, but they're not that good.
Yeah. But that's important. So how is one able to recognize a good idea from an okay one?
That depends on how much you consume content too. So I think to be a writer, you have to read lots of books too, read books, watch movies, anything. Like anything that stirs your brain properly too. And it depends on what it is. If writing a joke or an absurdist play, it's not going to be like a romantic play or let's say a dramatic play.
Yes.
So you have to decide what exactly do you want, who's the audience going to be, and what do you want as an outcome from reading something or looking at something. Like if you want to scare people, it has to scare you too a little bit in your side as well. So you have to be your own critic, your own friend, and your own honest reviewer also.
That's really tricky. That's
exactly.
That's tricky, because I feel like maybe some people can get one or two right, but not all three. For example, some people write, but they're not very good editors, or you're able to get a sense of what you're doing, but then you're not sure whether it's good or not. So sort of what do you do in that circumstance?
You need friends. 'Cause I know lots of people who
very important. You need friends. You need a circle.
Exactly. I know people, and they tell me that they feel like I'm not a good writer. Then that's a very self-defeating attitude too. It won't help anybody.
Yeah.
If it's bad, it's okay. It might get edited, then it'll be good afterwards too. Don't let your own bad thoughts get in your way. It happened to me all the time too. I'm like, I can't do it. It's very bad. There's no point in it. But then what's the point in that either? You have to be brave at least. The first thing for anything, you have to be brave and believe in yourself also. And then you'll get something worth watching or reading or looking at.
Yeah. No, I think that courage is an extremely important thing. And at this point, we're going to take a very quick break, leave you hanging, and come back in 1 minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table. We're talking to writers Dr. Mohammed Sajid Malik, Maheen Ahmed, and Maryam Rana-Poet about the wonderful things that they are writing, all the projects that they've been working on, and all the sort of challenges that one faces as a writer in a particular milieu. And at this point, before the break, we were talking about courage. And I'm really glad to have two girls here with me, because as a female writer myself, I feel like one can't ignore the amount of courage that it takes to put your thoughts out there. Now, I don't want to generalize by saying that, boys don't have self-doubt. We all do. Yeah. But do you feel, either one of you, that because, we are writers, we have friends who are writers, we have our circles. And I feel like there is a kind of slight hesitation before, and you both have put work out into the world now, and it's out there for everybody to kind of see. And how do you feel about that, Maryam? Do you think, was it daunting when you were sort of thinking of putting the work together to be like?
It was. I was very confused. I was like, I don't even know how to, okay, I was writing. I had I still have so much sorry, which needs to be published. Then a time came when I wrote Coal to Diamond. I would love to mention this poem was because I believe that every person is a coal at first. Now it's up to you. How do you turn yourself into a diamond, or you just remain a coal for your entire life? So this is what actually provoked me. So I started, I have certain friends. I used to write my poems. I used to get checked by them. I used,
so you have people to whom you can show your work.
There's this peer check thing, and they were like doomed. They were like, oh my God, you write so well. And that was the time when I was like, okay.
So, your eureka moment. Yeah. I can do this.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's really important to have community, isn't it?
Exactly. Communication makes you more empowered to write.
Yeah. Would you read Coal to Diamond?
Yeah, sure.
I love poets reading their work on the show.
Yeah. So it says, life goes on with passions inside us. Thoughts are meant to be felt inside us. Let those intramurals reveal. Let your extraordinary personality reveal. Ghosts haunting you should be killed, just like your immature attitude was killed. Be inventor of your own world. Succeed your exceptions and make your own world. This miraculous poetry has to come out. The extraneous you has to come out. Go to your thoughts street. Fill the emptiness of those streets. Streets filled with your pure soul. Allow the colorful wind pass your soul. Stunning loneliness will be covered. Your black and white nodes will be covered. Okay, now this is what I love. Oh, there's
there's
not
over yet.
It's not over. The main line is, you are a coal waiting to turn diamond. Allow that shell prick and pearl become diamond. So it's very important. You just allow that shell to prick, and the moment you allow it to prick, it will do wonders.
So there's courage, but then there's also vulnerability as well. And I feel like that Ramiz is also, to me, feels like that kind of really wonderful combination of the two. So tell me a little bit more about this collection.
So Ramiz is a work that came out after about 4 years of writing different poems, and they all came back together at one point. Ramiz was my father's friend's son, and he was born paralyzed. And he sort of died like 5 years ago, and during that time, I wrote one poem about him. And it talked about death and not having a full life, because he didn't really have much of a life, I thought, in that sense. But although it was about him by name, I felt it was mostly about my mother passing away. And I sort of used the following Ramiz poems to conceptually talk about my mother passing away and how children deal with death, and how we have to acknowledge suffering and talk about our pain also, because otherwise it sort of hangs on to you and sort of destroys your life also. So I thought for me, this is writing the whole story, the poems in a novel type way. It was sort of made me grow and have a release for myself also, and let things go for my own as well. And accept that happens. You can't really have to move on as well and accept it.
No, I think that's incredibly courageous of you. And, we were talking about community. So it's not, I feel like with writing, it's not just writers talking to each other, but it's also the community that writers and their readers create,
Yes.
between them? And do you have people sort of reached out to you after?
I've been very fortunate to always been around good content, good art, and lots of writers. I feel that most of my time I did not make the most of those opportunities, but I've always been surrounded by people who who I respect and who took care of me too. It does help, but I do feel like if you're writing in Pakistan, you might not always be read very widely, and you have to put a lot of work into read my stuff, which is sort of it's a struggle, but it pays off.
Yeah. We're going to sort of talk about that in 1 second also, because I have thoughts about this. What happens after the book comes out? But before that, I do want to ask Dr. Malik, you've done a lot of well, let's talk about community first, because what I want to ask you is that how do you feel about mentorship? Because you are somebody who's been writing for most of his life, but do you feel like you suffered because did you feel like an absence of mentors or a sense or a lack of community of writers around you?
Well, it's a very important question, mentorship. You see, environment is very, very important. The kind of environment you live that always has a very lasting impact on you. In Pakistan, the basic problem the writer face is we don't find a lot of people who can mentor us, who can tell us. There is a very different kind of attitude of the people who have achieved some place as a writer. Some people become very sort of unapproachable. And even if they talk to you, they are not very helpful. So yes, this is a problem. But you see, if you have the commitment, I believe that you can overcome all these obstacles. When you go as a writer, when you go around, you find stuff that inspires you. You were talking about the inspiration.
Yes.
The writer gets. You see, the people are inspiration. The people around you are inspiration. And when you talk about the topics, how a writer should pick a topic, you see, topics are everywhere. And the famous American short story writer, somebody asked him that how do you pick your topics? And he was sitting in a restaurant and he picked up the menu card and he said that here is a story. And he started writing about that. Yeah. So stories are everywhere. That is, you should have a keen eye and a soft heart to feel those things. And then, whether you have a mentor or not, you will start writing. Time comes that you become a mentor of yourself. So I would like to ask all people who want to write that they should just sit down and start writing. Everything else will take care of itself. So you should have the courage to write.
Well, I think that's really important. A lot of times people feel like in order to be a writer, with a capital A and a capital W, you have to, be a student of literature, or you have to sort of have read 100 books or be trained by someone. But I think that's really important here, that what you've just said about having a keen eye, because a story, you don't necessarily, what they say about it's like 10% inspiration and like 90% perspiration. Do you think that that's true?
You see, whatever we write, most of the time, it may not be unique. The idea may not be unique. The way you treat that idea is unique. Look at the great poets like Ghalib. What Ghalib says, many people say the same thing, but in a different way. What Iqbal says, he says in his own different way. Yeah. So a writer should have this unique ability to say a thing in a different way, which should touch the heart and mind of people. And if you're able to touch the heart and mind of the people, then you are different. So as a writer, your search should be to create a difference. And if you're able to create a difference, if you're able to hit the chord, a particular chord which everybody has in his mind and heart, then you become a different. So a writer should strive to create his own path. Even if he gets some good guidance, that is good, especially at initial stages when you're raw. But with the passage of time, you become your own teacher, you become your own mentor, you overcome the obstacles, and you become something. But I would like to ask the people, and other people, especially the young people, that they should start writing. And the kind of troubles we have in Pakistan, this is the best time for the writers, because you always write when you are in trouble. If you are happy and always, have no worries, you will not become a good writer. You may not think about the right part because you don't have worry. Having worries and having problems if we have a lot, unfortunately.
No, I'm smiling because I'm thinking Tolstoy when he says that happy families have no history, because you're just happy. It's fine. But do you feel like, Maheen, that sort of feeds into a stereotype also, that poetry must be born of suffering and literature comes from pain? That's not always the case, is it?
Not always. The popular ones normally are, ones we talk about in class at least. But there is a huge variety of literature too. We have comical poetry too. We have satirical poetry, and I like lyrical poetry a lot. Like songs are very lyrical. I like those. They're not considered poems, but I think they're very good.
Well, I think that they should, because songs are poems.
You should study them in class.
I love blowing classes' minds, when I teach, I'm just like, what's your favorite song? And they're like, X. And I'm like, that's a poem. You are a poet. You don't even know it. They're like, oh, Taylor Swift is a poet? I'm like, yes, she is. Yes. But what do you think about that?
I think they're like, I'm more into the symphonic ones, like, not, I love writing rhymes, and most of my poems are rhymes, but when you are writing symphonics, they're like more whatever is happening around and you just write them.
You sort of go with the flow.
Yeah.
But this is also something I'm thinking about, is audience. And Maheen, you talked a little bit about this as well. So when you are writing, how important is it to sort of keep an audience in mind? And I suppose do you think that that's also informed by what kind of writing you're doing?
Yes and no. It depends on if you have an audience at some point. Like generally novels and poems they take time to get an audience for themselves. Like, I'm not Faiz. I don't have a direct audience for somebody right now. So I have to build up my one too. But if you're on a TV show, you have to write for a screen, write news, then you have an audience in mind already. But if you work for a publication and you have a very specific set of audiences, like you have a female audience, so you're going to write for them in mind, not without them, or write male-centric stuff for them. So it does help a lot to know what you're writing for and have your own goals in mind also. But that does not mean if you have an audience in mind, you should forego your integrity or your morals.
That's very important. It's to kind of keep a sense of who you are as a writer, your sense as a writer, and sort of balance it with people who will be reading it. But, and the reason why I'm asking this, I'm leading up to your question, is that you write motivational poetry. And I think that's really interesting, because a lot of times that's not necessarily something that people have in mind when they're writing.
Yeah.
So why motivational poetry?
Because at first, I used to write poems to motivate my own self. Like, for example, if I've already told you, whenever I'm depressed, I would just write one. Okay, if I'm trying for something, I'm trying to achieve something, and unfortunately, I'm not getting that. So just to re-motivate myself, I used to write.
Yeah.
But after I shared those poems with my friends and family, they were like, oh my God, they're so good. Even we have these vibes. I mean, those were so relatable. When I shared that with a friend, she was like, oh my God, I feel the same way, but this is not, how can I write? I don't know how to portray that. You are portraying it so well. And that's how, you connect the dots and you reach to the level of finally, getting a book in your hand. That's mesmerizing.
That's wonderful. And I feel like that's a really good example of how an audience can be a really positive influence in motivating a writer to put their work out there. Because there's nothing better than, when somebody reads your work and they're like, I love that. I totally got what you were saying. And you're like, yes. We're going to take a very quick break here and come back to this fascinating conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to this lovely conversation with practical, hands-on writers who have been sharing all their wonderful experiences with us on the show. We've been talking to Dr. Sajid Malik, to Maheen Ahmed and Maryam Rana-Poet about their work and all the sort of wonderful ways that writers operate, but also some not so wonderful ways. And then this is where I want to talk about what happens when your book comes out into the world. Now, I know that Dr. Malik, you and I have some mutual thoughts on this, because so tell me about the publishing process. So you have a manuscript. Was it easy? Who edited your book? Did you do it yourself? Was the publisher able to do it?
Well, the most important question for any writer, that it is actually the most difficult part. Writing a book is difficult, but it's not as difficult as to publish it and then promote it. And in Pakistan, especially when we talk about English, there are not many publishing houses which are keen to publish English books, because the readership is mostly for Urdu. English readership is limited. And after all, publishing is a business. And they want that the book should go in the market and it should bring something, some profit. So it becomes very, very difficult for a writer to find a publisher. And if you find a publisher, then the negotiation, that part is also very difficult. And once this book is published, the rather more difficult thing is how to promote it, how to market it.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
What I have experienced that you can publish a book by spending some money, but then the publisher, what the publisher would do, he would get the money and he would be not interested in promoting your book.
They're just like, thanks, bye.
Yeah, and this is a niche also for those people who are in business. I would like to urge people that they should come in this field, that how to promote a book. You see, in Western countries and Western European countries, there are agents, literary agents, who not only publish your book, they also promote it. And your job is just to write a good piece. And then it's okay for you. But again, it's difficult. So if we can have some people who can come around and become literary agents, and they help the writers and the publisher as well as others, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I feel like there are many people all over the country who are writing, and I feel like a lot of times people, for example, reach out to me on social media and are asking me about publishers or about editors. So there's clearly an interest, but there's also a gap there where people need guidance about what to do with their work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because there is the market is totally disjointed. I mean, there is no connect between the writer, the publisher, and the promoter. Now, there should be some people or some organization at the government level also. I would request the government also that it should come forward and it should help the people to promote their books. And you see, there are a lot of libraries, which are the government libraries. And in armed forces, there are a lot of similar institutions and libraries where they can get the books and buy the books and promote it. So I would also request the institutions also that they should help the writer, because this is the image of Pakistan, the soft image of Pakistan. Those who are writing in English language, they can promote what many people here are thinking, that the actual Pakistan should go out and people should know that what sort of country it is. It's not about the bombs and the militants and the Taliban. There are a lot of soft aspects of Pakistan. And
there's so many different sides to it.
Promoting it, promoting it, highlighting it.
Yeah.
But if they are not heard, they are not held, then how this soft part of Pakistan will be promoted?
Quite right. And I feel like that this is also an issue with publishing globally as well, is that I think that South Asians have been sort of bracketed in certain stereotypes as well. And a lot of international publishers don't want to see the stories that are hopeful and funny and just different. Everything doesn't have to be gloom and doom. And if we don't write our own stories, who's going to do it? No one's going to do it for us. And then sometimes they do, and it's just really annoying. So Maheen, what do you think about that? Do you feel like it's been challenging for you also, sort of post-publishing?
Yeah. The first of all, you mentioned South Asia. I think South Asia for globally also just means India sometimes.
Yes.
So Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, we're such sidelined.
Yeah, there's so many countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, you're right.
It's just India, South Asia.
Yeah.
I actually have 2 books. This is book number 2 that I had done. My first book I got done from a company in England.
Oh,
and this was locally done by Pakistani company. So I have experience from both sides too.
So Maheen, you're somebody who's got 2 books out, and your first book of poetry was published in England.
Yeah, by an online company over there.
That's wonderful. And then now your second book was published here. So do you feel like there was a difference in approach in the 2 sort of publications?
I think the main thing is it's very expensive and you have to work a lot to get your name and work out there. I mean, I'm popular within circles, but not like, I'm not a big name already. Yeah. That's the one concern.
I like it. It's niche. Like, if you know, you know.
Yeah. I think for writers, it's important to have an online presence these days. It really helps, I think.
True.
That's one important thing.
So online presence, you mean like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook? You should be out there.
Those are popular sites too, but also like writer sites like Wattpad is important these days. Goodreads also. Online groups on social media too. anything, like whatever helps you meet your people, get your work out there, not even groups too. Make your own page, write whatever you want over there, and then people find you through that also. I think it's very important these days.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's very expensive too. With my first book, it didn't really cost me much, but it was more like a labor. Okay, just do it one time, get it done, and you'll be happy. And I always thought, okay, I'll get a book done. I'll feel, okay, I'm a person now. I've done something.
You know, you're a real writer now.
Yes, I've made it, but it doesn't really happen like that. So you have to like keep on working again and again, and don't think about getting money. It's you'll spend more money than you actually make money back. What happened with this actually, in a very strange but very magical thing too. So with the first book, it didn't cost me much, but I got my initial, wow, you did this.
Yeah, and the sort of, putting yourself out there definitively.
My father was happy, that was enough for me. But people like, where can you find your book? Buy it online, but that's really expensive. People, we can't buy on Amazon, it'll come, how will we get here? It was in England too, it was a small company. So I couldn't really say, okay, if you have a bigger company or a bigger publisher, they can spend some money on you and get it done a lot better way over here too, but it wasn't like that.
But that's also a problem with markets, because Pakistani markets aren't that big, and a lot of publishers don't sort of, concentrate on the market. But I feel like that there is such an interest. Like if you just look at bookstores, for example, and I'm just going as a layperson by the fact that when I go to one of my favorite bookstores for X book, a lot of times it's sold out, which means that people are buying books in English and they are reading them. And there is an interest, but there seems to sort of be a gap that we aren't somehow addressing. And it's really odd.
We lack the proper marketing too. How do we put our own people out there too? Okay, why should you read our books? Like you have to get ads too. Like you can't compete with Harry Potter. They've had years and years of marketing and people, movies too. We can't compete with that.
Nobody can compete with that. So Maryam, do you feel like because you have a presence on Facebook for the painting, do you feel like that has also helped you publicize the book a little bit more?
Yeah, I actually published through my through Facebook page. I reached to some writers and a publishing company through Facebook, and that's how it came out. But as you have, I would like to correlate like the publishing house thing. This is really tough. At times, you never know. It's not just in Pakistan. It's like all around the world. You don't know who to trust and who not to. This is a big thing.
So what do you mean with trust? Sort of, will they edit your work properly?
Yeah.
Will they kind of give you the right advice?
From editing to what you are actually trying to portray, sometimes people might fraud with you, and they might end up. If you give them your work, they sometimes, actually it happened with me, they will post my work with their names, which was very
Publishing and plagiarizing your own work?
Yeah.
Sue them.
So, no,
Maheen's just like, get them, sue them.
So there was really hard.
That's horrible. Like, oh my God, you have struck terror into my heart. This is like the worst. This is a nightmare.
So that happens when you, like, I am not a full-time writer, I have to work professionally. I am a clinical dietitian. I have to work hours of, to earn money, as she has already mentioned, that in writing, you have to pay more than to earn more. Just to balance that equilibrium in my life, I have to, professionally.
And as many of us, we all have day jobs, and then we're sort of doing this also. So it really is a labor of love.
Yeah. Exactly. If people ask you, when you just tell them I'm a writer, like, you just write? Like, is that it?
Scribbling away.
Yeah, like, writing is...
sweat and tears have got into this.
Writing is a full-time job as well. You have to give your mind and heart and to write on the piece of paper.
But again, if the publishing sort of industry isn't strong enough and they don't take the work seriously, then other audiences won't take the work seriously. So I feel it's a sort of, it's a cycle here.
So you must build up your portfolio online as well. It helps a lot. Lots of people, younger writers too from England, they're very young, they're not that good, but they have good deals with them because they're popular and they have an audience already available.
So that's actually a really good tip, is to kind of put yourself out there, be a presence on the internet enough so that you have created an audience for yourself. And that is something that would help a publisher notice you. Because presumably it would be easier to sell. Like, like Rupi Kaur, for example. She had like this ready-made audience just waiting to grab her book.
Yeah,
so that probably just made
her.
it much easier to do. Everyone's like, yes, Rupi Kaur. I think that's like the ultimate internet poetry success story.
And not just writers, also artists or singers, whatever you do, get your online presence done.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Malik, you want to add in?
I would like to add something about the problem faced by the writers, basically.
Yes.
Because since we don't have any solid platform for it,
yes.
there are issues. And the institutions of the government, as I said earlier, should help the writers. But it should not stop the writer from writing. The point is that you should continue to write. You should continue to write the right things. And the most important thing is to have a right idea. If you have a right idea, then it would definitely fail. And that should be your motivation and inspiration. Because when you go around and you want to do anything in your life, there are hurdles and there are problems and there are discouragements. But you should be your own encouragement. And you should be the one, and the inner voice of yours should tell you and keep on telling you that go ahead, follow your dreams, go after your dreams, and then people will follow you.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a hopeful and optimistic note to end this show on. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. Congratulations on your wonderful books, which I think one can find on the internet if one wanted.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram.
Yes, follow them on Instagram. Find them on Facebook. The work is wonderful. And Dr. Malik's books are also out there. Thank you so much for joining me today in this wonderful conversation. I think it's been so helpful and instructive to so many writers out there who are sort of, you all have the right idea and you're writing from the heart, but then you need some practical solutions as well. But remember, build community, read a lot. Good luck. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you, writers and all, next time on the coffee table. Bye now.